I'm Dana Nye, president of Ben Nye Makeup, and we're at United Makeup Artists Expo in London. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like you to meet Darren Jinks, wig master for the LA Opera. He's served there since 2009. He recently won the Critics Award for The Magic Flute in 2014 from the Artists Guild in Los Angeles. He's going to demonstrate all manner of effects that turns our beautiful damsel into a battle-worn victor with multiple abrasions, cuts and bruises, lacerations, and all manner of dishevelment. In a few minutes, we're going to move to the main stage here at UMA London. So Darren's going to begin her makeup now, and we'll catch up with him when he moves on to the main stage. So Darren, let's begin.
All right. So we have our lashes on. To start, we're going to preset some of these prosthetics. They are gel silicone encapsulated prosthetics, GFAs, gel-filled appliances. They're made with bald cap material called Baldies, Super Baldies to be specific, which is dissolvable with alcohol, and they were just run in flat molds like this, which were silicone molds. So we'll be talking about those again on stage briefly. And I have a selection of indented scars and then fresh cuts, and then she'll have a split lip later. I don't think we'll use that, that's a swollen eye. We want to maintain some of the beauty. Our scar is going to go here, and then we're going to do a cut across her cheek here, and she's going to have a split lip here, and then she'll probably have a collar thing, so I think we'll do this on that arm. And for the application of these, I'm using medical adhesive. The company that makes it is Premier Products, PPI. It's called Telesis 5. So I just put down a little bit of the silicone glue and position my wound. Give it a bit of a stretch, but not too much, because if you stretch it too much, when you go to melt the edge off, it will cause it to pull back and you'll end up with wrinkles. So you can see how quickly that's adhered down. And then you can just do these very quickly. Then you just take some 99% IPA, isopropyl alcohol, and that's going to dissolve the edge off and blend it into the skin. You just take a little brush, or you can use a Q-tip, and just knock the edge off. I do like to take just a little bit of final seal, and generally I'll just mist over it and really quickly run a brush down it. That just removes any powder residue. So that's got that one. Now we're going to move on to the one on the neck. So same application technique as before. Now these are the ones that I was talking about that are more delicate. They're an incised scar, and they're just going to run from her forehead down to the center, and there are two little ones, and then there's a separate piece that I'll put on the cheek. So I'm just going to cut those apart really quickly. So a little glue down, figure out where it needs to rest, the best place. Like I said, when it sticks, boom, it's done, it's stuck. We also have a lovely little hair piece that we're going to use to blend off the top that I'll be showing the application on stage. And I can see where the scar ends, which is up here in the plate, so I know I've cleared that. So I'm out of the silicone prosthetic portion of it. So, same thing again, melt off the edges. I'm going to go ahead and add the cheek piece before I continue with a little bit of sealer over top of it. Notice all the pieces that I've applied, I've always put a little dot of glue in the center as an anchor point. Then you can hinge the piece up and keep working the sides down and out from the center. And since these particular wounds are old scars, they're not going to be covered with blood, so I'm being extra careful with how I lay things down. So there's nothing to hide the blank edge. So the rest of them we'll deal with when we get to stage. So now we're going to move on to the beauty makeup. I'm going to take a little bit of Ben Nye's Cream Contour 18 color palette. that are going to add a little bit of life back into this. They're pretty good, but they're a little devoid of some of the reds before I put the foundation on it. That way, they'll have that life underneath to show through once the foundation goes on. So what we're using is a little bit of Blushing Rose and Island Coral, just right on the prosthetic. Moving on to the foundation, we have two from the Matte HD foundation range, and her skin is a little yellow and a little beige, so we're mixing this Shensei Fair with the Sin Beige. And since she is supposed to be medieval damsel, I don't think a lot of makeup is called for, so we're going to do a very nice thin application. She starts in a beauty makeup, but we're going to finish it with a lot of dirt and grime, so I'm not going to spend too much time with this. So we're going to go upstairs now. We did some things prior. Beauty makeup, we were going to just do, well, called beauty makeup, a nice corrective makeup. Now that she's up here, I think she could actually use a little bit more readiness, so I'm going to go back in my palette and kind of finish off the beauty makeup really quickly before we move on to the effects portion of it. She hasn't been powdered yet because obviously you don't want to do your powdering until all your wet work is done, until your cream work is done. Then you can powder, go back in, and move on to your dry colors, and you can bump with your rouge, your dry rouges, which we have several palettes. We are going to end up doing distress over this, but this would be like your first act, initial introduction to the character.
So this is, what?
I'm using one of
Cameo?
your new luxury powders, relatively new. Very fine milled, doesn't take a lot. I had picked Cameo. I've barely put any powder on her face, and I haven't destroyed the texture of the makeup. And if you turn that way, it's a nice finish to it. It still has a little bit of a velvety feel to it, so it's not completely matte. And if you go back to the other side, as opposed to the unpowdered. And I'm just using this as kind of a starting liner. And please look up. To just lightly run around the lash line as an eye definer. Now I guess we'll go on to effects. So we've got that done. There are a couple of small prosthetics on her forehead and cheek. They're scar prosthetics, so I'm now going to go in and just augment those. And I'm just going to pull some colors out of the lovely Ultimate FX palette that Ben Nye has, which has every color that you really need for
A lot of them.
creating effects. And they also, they also produce wheels of individual specialized things. For instance, this is the Master Bruise wheel. There are several different ones for burns and other things. So I was thinking that this wouldn't be a super old scar, that it would still have some pretty rosy tones to it. So I've chosen some colors that emulate that, such as capillary stipple, and we've got a little bit of dark burgundy, and just a touch of dried blood, which is a browner color. And even though they're defined that way, you can use them, if you use them properly to create the effect of aged scars. The other thing with this product is it's thinnable with alcohol. So the foundation, the carrier in it, the base, allows you to create washes that will actually bite into things very nicely. And you can, as quickly as that, with a little bit of the alcohol, pull up the old scar, and then you can continue to deepen it until you get what you want color-wise. And I'll usually start out slowly and then just build it till I get what I feel is appropriate. And I'm taking a little bit of extra time with these particular scarring because it's exposed. You're not going to be, like when you go to do a wound, you have to think about what it's involved with. If you're doing a medical show and that wound is going to be shown cleaned up, then you have to do all this intricate painting, to show fatty tissue and whatnot, depending on how deep it is. But if it's going to be covered in blood, you don't take the time to do all of that if you're going to cover it up, because it's pointless.
So you're just floating a little bit of alcohol onto the color you've
Just a touch, yep.
taken out with the spatula?
Yep. And just like, since all of the foundations carry the same general base material, they're all dissolvable with alcohol, so I've gone back to the adjuster palette and just picked up some highlight that I'm going to run along the edge very gently, just to help pop some of the scar out a bit more. So before we move on to distressing and the rest of it, I just had thought it was cool if, for the character design, since she has a scar up here, if she also ended up having a bit of a shock to the system that caused the hair to go white above the scar. So I'm just going to add that as a little character element. So that portion, we would call that, possibly the starting look for her. She came back, she's finished filming, or she's finished Act 1, and then it's intermission, and we have to change her into her destroyed self. So we've, like I said, we preset a couple of things. There's a little prosthetic cut here on her collarbone, and one on the arm. I'm now going to do the lip appliance. I've got some water slide paper, which is how these prosthetics work. So it's made on this out of Prozaid, creamed Prozaid, whipped Prozaid, or filled Prozaid, Cavasil. So you just put the slide paper on, and you make sure it's the shiny side and not the matte side, because the matte side has no release on it, and you'll never get the piece off of it. This is a trick that I saw on something, I think it's a Gary Tunnicliffe, who's a British makeup artist but lives in the US, where he'll spray a little water and then lay this in the water, and the paper will curl up, and it will have a chance to actually get to the activate the slide. And usually it just takes a couple of seconds. It curls up, and usually when it starts to go flat again, it's ready to go. And the water's just on the back. If you get it on the front, you're going to screw up the ability to actually adhere it. So don't do that if you do this. The other thing about doing it that way is the paper is instantly malleable, so you can just kind of shape it with your fingers around whatever form you're trying to put it on. So now she has a little cut on her lip, and you can take some 99 alcohol, and any of the edges that aren't that pretty, you can just roll away. Until that's powdered, it's very, very sticky. So you will have your artist, your actor, your singer, whomever you happen to be working with, end up with their mouth glued shut. So
This powder is called Neutral Set. It's a clear powder. It's very useful because it does not change the color. So if there was just one powder in the world, it would probably be Neutral Set.
you just paint a little quick layer of Final Seal over top of it. The next thing would be to go into bruising, and bruising is, of course, individual choice of how you're going to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and pick some colors to create my bruise, and he has many colors that are actually perfect for it. There's a gray purple and a purple, and it depends on, obviously your bruise is going to depend on, or what your bruise looks like is going to depend on the age of it. These we're saying are fresh bruises. She's made it, through the battle, and we're seeing the aftermath of that battle with the dirt and the blood and everything else. So they're going to be more on the reddish purple side. Having said that, I often add just a little bit of yellow into the highlight. It is, after all, kind of a fantasy theatrical thing, and it just helps sell the bruise a bit more than just having it red. So I picked up his lovely goldenrod yellow, which is great for old bruise colors or for adding a highlight to it. And then I'm also going to go into the fresh cut, which I will need for the cut anyway, and bruise, which is right next to it. I'm not using alcohol near her eye. I've switched. That's the nice thing about these creams. You can go to the other side of whatever you pulled out of the palette, go around the eye, do your work, and then go back to the alcohol use, because you really obviously don't want to use alcohol around the eye. I'm choosing to put the bruise over here, close please, just so that we leave a little bit of the beauty portion over there. We'll add probably some scratches. Everyone paints their bruises differently. I like a lot of breakup in it so that it looks really angry. We're also going to go down and start a little bit down here. Generally, if there's a cut, especially a deep cut, there wouldn't be a lot of bruising necessarily around that, because the blood's had a chance to escape. Bruising results from blood collecting under the skin.
We've had the discussion about the about subtlety versus drama, and film makeup artists tend to play everything pretty down, and but when you start subtly, you can always add to your effect.
And I did switch to a different brush for the yellow, because I stayed with the same brush mainly because I worked light to dark, so I laid in my reds just to save time, and then went to darker red, and then went to a purple, and then went to a deep purple in the corner of the eye. So now I'm going to go in and just add a little bit of some yellow stippled in just on the top of the cheekbone.
So is this the chrome yellow or the golden?
The golden. One? Then I'm going to go into the cuts, and I'm going back to the same palette of reds that I used before, and starting with a brighter red, and I'm just going to go ahead and color the inside of the cuts. Since we're adding blood to this, there's no point, like I said, in taking the time to be nitpicky about stuff. You need to provide at least a base in case the blood gets washed away, so there's something there for that still keeps it looking like a cut. Now I'm just going in and picking up just a little bit of the darker areas. Often they call it making it look angry, or at least we have, where you just add a little bit of red past it. Like I said, if it's going to get dirt and stuff on it, don't make it your masterpiece, your life's work. I rarely use my fingers on the face, but for some reason, Bruises,
to
tap it with your finger, there's something about the texture of it. It just make sure they're clean. If you're going to do a split lip, don't put so much that you won't actually see where the split of the lip is. So much bruising. We're just putting down colors so that if the blood does drip away, there's something there and it still looks raw. I'm just going to put a couple of scrapes with a brush on the side of her face here, just to lay down something to follow. A really quick and easy way of creating little scrapes and cuts. You can use a stipple sponge and dip this in it and go for an abrasion. You can also take a little bit of their product. This is Fresh Scab. It's a little bit darker, and then they have Fresh Blood, which is a little fresher. So if there are just scrapes that you need to quickly produce, you just take it onto a palette and your knife and kind of drag your knife through it, and you can just kind of touch the skin and you get nice little cuts. And the stuff that's underneath is just, again, to provide a line, and if it gets washed away. But those would be simple scrape techniques. While I've got this, I'm going to actually add just a little bit of blood to this. And then you can do this with a sponge, you can do it with whatever you like. I happen to have a baby wipe here and a spray bottle. Since she's dirty, I might also just take the spray bottle. This is, by the way, Magicolor Brown and Black. So it's brown with a little bit of black, and we've mixed it with Liquicet. And we use this a lot on stage for dirt because it will stay put, stays for a really long time, and washes off very easily with soap and water. If it's spritzed on really quickly, then you can take a baby wipe and kind of get that ground-in dirt look so it all ends up in the pores.
He has made his own spray by pouring into this cylinder bottle about fifth of the bottle is filled with dry powder, and then he added the liquisette. And he got a ball bearing, and so he made his own spray for character effects.
When I did the boots, will you kind of just close your eyes? What I did was just kind of take something and do a little bit of dirt flicking. Because, you know, she's been riding a horse or whatnot, or who knows, there's going to be flicked dirt. And it's again a different type of texture that you can do. But it worked really well to kind of distress the boots. And it does come off very easily with a baby wipe, which is kind of great. And of course, you kind of have to make sure you've gotten everything. She has a very nice clean neck, so really quickly I'm just going to not make it so clean. Then the other thing would be blood. Two types of blood, dark blood and the original stage blood. This is brighter, this is deeper. So I would start with the lightest. I tend to start just like when I painted the wounds. I started with the lighter color and then went to the darker color. Again, a finger is really great here. Usually blood doesn't just sit there, it gets moved around. You can hit it with the water and it will run so that it looks like it's old. And this is the fresh blood. I don't know if you can see the yellows coming out, and then it's really pretty for blood.
Again, it's important to underplay the blood. I mean, a lot of times less is more
you cover it with blood.
effective.
Why have you done all of this work, right?
Right.
So also, like I said, a finger is really good here, or Kleenex. A little water just to make it run, and then maybe we've still got like a bit of a drip off the chin or something. This is generally our go-to blood for stage shows, because we find out of all the bloods, we've just had the most luck with getting it out of costumes. The only other thing that I would do to her really quickly is just pick up whatever brush you have, and if you hit your blood with a little bit of water, you can kind of...
Yeah, this flicking thing, I love this.
So this would be like cast off from people she's killed.
Yeah, so I could flick like this all day, you know, never get tired of it. It's just a fabulous effect. And we're all looking for little tricks. We've had one incredible class today, and I'd like to give it up for Mr. Darren Jinks for doing such a
Thank you.